the Caitanya Caritamrita is accepted as the prominent by the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, the followers of Rupa Goswami, especially the followers of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And although there are other scriptures, especially Chaitanya Bhagavat, that give a great amount of detail into the pastimes of the Lord, the Caitanya Caritamrita really establishes the Siddhanta, the Sambandha, who are the personalities in the Lord's Lila, why he came, the philosophy, understanding who is the Lord, who is the living entity, what is this material nature, how they're interacting. And this is very much detail described in Caitanya Caritamrita. It's described that the Bhagavad Gita is like the beginner class, like the primary school. The Srimad Bhagavatam is like the graduate study, like in the university. And then the Caitanya Caritamrita is like the postgraduate study. So to really understand, of course, we can never fully understand in the sense of fitting God within our brains. Obviously, we are very minute living entities, and we're trying to understand the supremely, the absolute, the unlimited with our limited. So although we can never understand, but still to understand the Caitanya Caritamrita, we really need to have that firm grounding in the Bhagavad Gita. We're not this body. Bhakti Yoga is the goal of life, to attain eternal service to the Lord. And then Srimad Bhagavatam gives so many incarnations, so many avatars, and so many interactions between the Lord and his devotees, how they perform devotional service, how they did. And of course, many of them, of course, the 10th canto gives a great elaboration into the pastimes of Bhagavan Krishna, Sri Krishna himself, in Vrindavan and Mathura and Dwarka. But many of these pastimes and many of these interactions are in faraway parts of the universe, in other times, in other ages. But to show mercy to the conditioned souls, Sri Krishna himself has come in this Kali Yuga, in this age itself, only a mere few hundred years ago, when already Kali Yuga was very much in full swing. The land of Bharat Bhumi, of India, was in a large part ruled by kings and rulers that weren't following Vedic culture. They were doing all kinds of non-Vedic, non-sattvic activities, and even the followers of Vedic culture themselves, many of them had become degraded. So into this environment, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Krishna himself appeared, and these are the pastimes of the Lord, of how we can really relate to that. You know, it may be hard to relate to Ravana with 10 heads and Ram. It's almost sort of like an ideal, something like, wow, we learn so much from the pastimes, but it's a little bit separate in our minds from our immediate reality. You know, we don't see demons with 10 heads coming and things like that in the Kali Yuga. Everything's very, very degraded here. Very, very. Nothing's very empowered. Even the demons are not that empowered. But we can relate to, when we hear the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, the Lord came as a devotee. There's one verse, Shiradhara Bhavalaya Chaitanya Avatar Yuga Dhamma Nama Prema Kaila Pracha. So he came in Kali Yuga to experience the mood of Srimati Radharani internally, but externally he came to spread the Sankirtan movement, which means he came as a devotee. He actually came as a devotee, and by studying the Caitanya Caritamrita, we can very deeply understand how devotees should interact, and how devotees should act, how they progress, how they don't progress. There's so many examples, people committing offences and different things. So anyway, this Caitanya Caritamrita is really the essence. It's the topmost scripture, and it's the one that we can relate to. We can really relate to, and we really should study this to understand how the devotees interacted, what was important to them, what was not important to them. Only a few hundred years ago, we can directly relate to all of these pastimes. So we'll read the verse. This verse, right? Text 123. Kevala Lila chale prabhura ye bhaktagan. Sankshepe kariya kichu se sabha kathan. Kevala Lila chale prabhura ye bhaktagan. Sankshepe kariya kichu se sabha kathan. Kevala Lila chale prabhura ye bhaktagan. Sankshepe kariye kichu se sabha kathan. Kevala, only. Lila chale, in Jagannath Puri. Prabhura, of the Lord. Jai Jai, all those. Bhaktagan, devotees. Sankshepe, in brief. Kariye, I do. Kichu, some. Se sabha, all those. Katana, narration. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Let me briefly describe some of the devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri. Text 124. Among the devotees who accompanied the Lord in Jagannath Puri, two of them, Paramananda Puri and Sarup Damodar, were the heart and soul of the Lord. Among the other devotees were Gadadhar, Jagadananda, Shankara, Bakreshwar, Damodar Pandit, Thakur Haridas, Raghunath Vaidya, and Raghunath Das. Purport. The Chaitanya Bhagavatamrita Lila chapter 5 states that Raghunath Vaidya came to see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when the Lord was staying at Panihati. He was a great devotee and had all good qualities. According to the Chaitanya Bhagavat, he was formerly Revati, the wife of Balaram. Anyone he glanced upon would immediately attain Krishna consciousness. He lived on the seashore at Jagannath Puri and compiled a book of the name Sthana Nirupana. Text 127. I'll just stop there for a second. So these are some of the really leading devotees in Jagannath Puri with the Lord. So we know that Lord Chaitanya, he took sannyas at a very young age of 24, and of course there was the pastime where he went to meet the devotees at the house of Advaitacharya soon after taking sannyas, and he spent some time with the devotees there just to placate them, because they were in complete separation. They'd spent their whole lives with Lord Chaitanya in Navadvip in Mayapur, and then all of a sudden he left. So he came there at Shantipur and he spent about 10 days there, and his mother cooked for him, Mother Sachi was cooking for him, and just to help the devotees who were literally losing their lives in separation from him, and to establish that he'd taken sannyas. So he came before his mother at this time and he said, I know I've given up my duty to my mother by taking sannyas. I should have stayed with her. Like this, he was saying many different. Of course, he's not he's not criticizing himself like that, but he in an expression of love to his mother, and very, very soft-hearted words he gave to Mother Sachi, and he said, you tell me what you want me to do. And of course Mother Sachi, she knew that the duty of a sannyasi is not to stay at home with her mother, not to stay in the village. The duty of a sannyasi is to go out and spread spiritual knowledge all over the world. So she didn't want, of course, that he would be criticized, for staying around where his mother was, but at the same time she couldn't bear the separation from him. So she came up with a request, that she requested Lord Caitanya that please, what you do is that actually Jagannath Puri and Mayapur, they're like two rooms in the same house. She said, because actually people are always coming and going from Puri to Mayapur. So if you know the geography of India, of Bharata, then you know that the Mayapur and Puri are both on the east coast, and they're not that far apart. They're not that far apart. Of course, in those days it would take some months to walk and go, but still they're relatively close. So she said, if you go and make your headquarters at Puri, then constantly I'll hear news of you. Constantly I'll hear news. And so Lord Caitanya accepted that, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made his headquarters in Puri. Of course, from 24 to 30, for 6 years, he travelled all over India, and he spread the Sankirtan movement. But then he came back and he stayed in Puri and had so many pastimes there. So there is this external pastime with Mother Sachi, we can see of why the Lord went to Jagannath Puri. And at the same time we can understand that Puri is the perfect place for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to exhibit his pastimes. Because of course in Puri, the pastime of Rath Yatra happens, where Lord Jagannath, as Krishna himself, he comes out of the temple and he's pulled through the streets of Puri, from the big temple up to the what's it called, the temple? Gundicha. So I was thinking Gambhira. Gundicha, thank you. Up to the Gundicha temple, which represents Vrindavan. So the whole pastime of Rath Yatra is actually, we know it's a reenactment of when Krishna and Balaram, when they went to and Subhadra Devi, when they went to Kurukshetra to have a big celebration, and all the Pandavas were there and the Kurus, everybody was there, and actually some of the residents of Vrindavan, they'd heard about this, and of course Kurukshetra is much closer to Vrindavan than is Dwarka. So they actually went there, and they were saying, in fact there's a very famous verse from that Srimati Radharani was saying at that time, saying that, you are the same Krishna, I am the same Radharani, but here you have the big, crown of the king, and there's all horses and chariots and big pronouncements and so many things, but actually, that I would like to, in my heart, is to be in Vrindavan, in the simple village, with Mother Yashoda and Nanda and all the cowherd boys, the cowherd girls, in this atmosphere of Vrindavan. And so the gopis, that they're taking the chariot of Jagannath, of Krishna, and pulling him back to Vrindavan. So this is actually the mood of Srimati Radharani, like the verse we just quoted, right? Shri Radhara Bhava Lila Chaitanya Avatar. So he took on this mood of Srimati Radharani in separation from Krishna, to show that this is the topmost levels of bhakti, actually. So Puri was the perfect place for Lord Caitanya to come and take that mood of the foremost devotee of the Lord, and exhibit that bhava, that emotion, and experience it himself, and then also distribute that in the Sankirtan movement. So these devotees, they accompanied the Lord to Jagannath Puri. Paramananda Puri, Sarup Damodar were the heart and soul of the Lord. There was also Gadadhar, Jagadananda, Shankara, Vakreshwara, Damodar Pandit, Thakur Haridas, Raghunath Vaidyan, Raghunath Das. One of the things that really is really important about Caitanya Caritamrita is it lets us understand, as I was saying before, how devotees act in the association of devotees, how devotees deal with things. And just looking here at the example of Damodar Pandit, and there's a few other examples, but this is a good example where Damodar Pandit was actually was not to say critical, but he was very straightforward in his thoughts to Lord Caitanya. And one time there was a young son of a widow in Puri, and she was still quite young, a young beautiful widow. The husband had died, and she had a son, and this son would like to come and visit Lord Caitanya. And Lord Caitanya, Damodar Pandit didn't like that, because he thought, you're a sannyasi, you're still young. Lord Caitanya was only 30, right? He travelled around for 6 years, from 24 to 30, then from 30 to 48. He spent 18 years in Puri. So he was still relatively young. And obviously, he's the Lord, he's the most beautiful personality. So Damodar Pandit actually came to the Lord and said, you shouldn't be seen associating with the son of this widow, because people might talk. People might talk. Oh, he has affection for the son. The mother's not married. What does that mean? There may be some talk. And he actually spoke quite strong words. He said, you call yourself a big teacher, but what kind of teaching are you giving by this example that you're showing? Right? Very strong words. So Lord Caitanya said, he said, my dear Damodar, he said, you are so strict that you can even correct me, Lord Caitanya said. So he said, actually, I think what is better, if you go to Mayapur and stay with Mother Sachi, stay there in Mayapur with all the devotees, and you can tell all the devotees about my pastimes here, and that will be very good for them. So this is one example. Another example is when Lord Caitanya was in South India, there was a devotee, Kala Krishna Das, who was the servant of Lord Caitanya, and he became bewildered, and Lord Caitanya actually had to save him from going associating with worldly-minded women, however you want to say it, and literally go and physically save him, although he was a brahmachari, this Kala Krishna Das. So when Lord Caitanya came back to Puri, he said to the devotees, I can't look on the face of this person. I can't look on the face of someone who's putting it out there that they're in the renounced order, that they're in a renounced brahmachari life, but at the same time their mind is so absorbed in thinking about the opposite sex and all these kind of worldly things. He said, I can't look on the face of this person. So he said, please take him away. So in that case again, what we see is the devotees didn't just say, okay, you're out. And I would comment that that's almost a kind of a Christian idea. Let me put it that way. It's a kind of Christian idea. It's like one or the other. You're the greatest, or you're eternally damned. You're one or the other, that's it. Oh, you're out. What do they call excommunicated, isn't it, in the church? You're out, that's it. But the devotees didn't do that. What did they do? Does anyone know what the devotees did with Kala Krishna Das? Does anybody know? The devotees made an arrangement for him to go back to Mayapur and tell all the devotees there about Lord Chaitanya's amazing pastime, because he just spent years travelling around South India with Lord Caitanya. So the devotees in Mayapur were in ecstasy. They were just hearing snippets. And here was this devotee who was going to come and live and say, well, we went to this temple. Lord Caitanya went and he paid obeisances to the deity, and then this person came up and this happened and that happened. It was like all the details were there. They were in ecstasy. Wow. And he was given great respect. Of course. He traveled personally with Lord Caitanya. At the same time, Lord Chaitanya's desire that this devotee, he didn't want to accept this devotee in the association that yes, everything's fine. No, he didn't want to accept that, so he was removed. Now, the same thing with Damodar Pandit. There's another whole pastime which I won't get into because it's quite long. With who was the one who cheated on his, not really cheated on his taxes, but he had some intrigue with the son of the king. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? Ramananda Roy's, yeah, it was one of Ramananda Roy, Gopinath Patanaika. Thank you. Yeah, so he was a little bit, didn't know what to say at what exact time. So he had to give some horses to the king, and the king's son came to get the horses, and apparently the king's son, the prince, had a little bit of a kind of a nervous, what do you call it, a nervous tic or some kind of idiosyncratic, what's the word? Something, anyway, he had something he used to do. He kind of like, his neck would go like this. Just a nervous kind of thing. So then, a nervous tic, yeah, but there's some other word for it. Not an actual tic, like on his neck, no. But it was some kind of nervous thing. And so the prince offered a certain amount of money for the horses, which Gopinath Patnaika thought, that's not enough. So, and he said, well, why? And he said, well, at least these horses don't, look up to the sky every 3 seconds. Not what you want to be saying to the son of the king. By the way, this is all in Caitanya Caritamrita. Everything I've said today is simply in this book. It's all in this book. If you really want to go deep in Krishna consciousness, really understand, read Caitanya Caritamrita. It's all there. It's just incredible. So anyway, what happened was the king's son had him put up on a changa, which is like a thing where they have swords and they're going to throw you down onto the sword. But it's like a threat. They didn't actually do it, but they put him there, saying, all right, had him arrested, put him there. And then the devotees went to Lord Caitanya and said, can you help? And he said, I'm a sannyasi. I can't get into things with kings. And if he's cheated on his taxes and not paid the money to the government, what can I do? Go and pray to Lord Jagannath. So there's a whole intrigue of how that whole thing played out. But then ultimately, of course, some other devotees talked to the king, Maharaj Prataprudra, and said, oh, your son's done this. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, take him down. And it was all sorted out. But Lord Caitanya himself said, no, you have to follow the rules of the land. You have to pay the taxes. You have to do the proper thing, whatever it is. So there's so many examples. But I really wanted to say that, when we're talking about how to deal with devotees that haven't done the right thing or something like that, if we base the discussion on Caitanya Caritamrita, then we all have a common footing, a common standing to discuss what should be done, right? But if we base the discussion on the modern, like kind of politically correct whatever, then we're immediately in the realm of motive passion, materially motivated things, everything like that. So I think we can see from this, even the example of Junior Haridas, another example, where Lord Caitanya, his devotees, dealt with people in a certain way that was good for everyone. And if we discuss things in terms of scripture, and not just like, we use the words of scripture, but actually understand how did Lord Caitanya deal with his devotees? How did his devotees deal with his devotees? How did they deal with Damodar Pandit? How did they deal with Kala Krishnadas? They didn't just say, Lord Caitanya wants you out, you're out. No, they said, we will make this other arrangement where you can continue your service, and also the greater good is taken care of. So this is the great gift actually we've been given by Lord Caitanya, is to understand how to be able to deal in an association, in a society where where it's good for everyone. Krishna is all good, so it's good for everyone. And of course, there's a need to be able to interact with government organizations and the current rules and all those things, and we have all of that is in place. But at the same time, amongst ourselves, the core, the heart of the discussion really has to be based on these things. And we see Srila Prabhupada would always, he'd talk about something. He said whenever a Vaishnava talks, he gives evidence from the scripture. So when you talk and when you give evidence from the scriptures, all of these different aspects are there. They're all included. And if you talk based on concepts of right and wrong by the materialistic idea on a paradigm that says, we are this body, we have one life, that's it. Do whatever you want to the animals and whatever, just as long as you don't break the laws of the land. All these kind of things, we're actually putting ourselves within that whole mode of, passion, ignorance. And if the Sambandha is within passion, ignorance, the prayojan is going to also be the ultimate goal. If how we're thinking about things is in the terms of the materialistic culture, the activity, the discussion will be materialistic, and the final fruit will be materialistic, which is offensive to Krishna when we're dealing with devotees. If we deal with devotees, spiritualists, in a materialistic way, then we're open to offensive behavior, which is not good for our, But if we can base it and really study, especially Chaitanya Caritamrita, because there's so many examples there of how these kind of things are dealt with. And then we might have different, opinions on it. Oh yeah, but that doesn't apply. Just like when two lawyers are discussing, they have the law books, they all agree, this is the law. Okay, that's agreed. And then amongst them they'll say, yeah, but Your Honour, this case is different. Right? Whoever's trying to defend, he'll say, no, but this case is different. And whoever's trying to say, no, this is the same. It's the same principle of the law. But the law book is there. You see, the law book is there. So we might all have our different, interpretations of it. We might say, yeah, but this is different because Damodar Pandit did this and did that, and this was different to that, and that's okay. And someone else might say, yeah, but the principles are the same because this and that. There may be discussion on how it applies, how it doesn't apply, what it is. But at least the law book, the law book is the same. You're talking about, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and ultimately Chaitanya Caritamrita. But if we go into discussing things from, materialistic nomenclature, then we're completely divorced from this. We're not. We've instead of Shastra Chakshu, we Shastra Achakshu. We've just said, oh yeah, there's all these old stories, but this is what we really have to do. We have to, we're just separating ourselves from the actual wealth, that Lord Chaitanya has given us, and how to apply that is the real wealth. How to apply it in our life to progress. So, I hope that makes some sense. And it's also the appearance day of Ramdas Abhiram Thakur. I'll just say a few words on him. So Ramdas Abhiram was an eternal associate of the Lord. In fact, he is, in Krishna Lila, he is none other than Sridham, cowherd friend of Krishna and Balaram. And when he came in a miraculous way. He didn't actually have a mother and father, but Lord Nityananda actually went to Vrindavan and brought him to be in the Lila of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He, just like we have Krishna and Balaram, like Balaram has a has the rope and the plough. So Ramdas Abhiram had a kind of a whip that was part of his sort of cowherd boy things, and he would actually touch people with that, and they would become ecstatic immediately, just pure love of Godhead. So he's a very, very special devotee. Obviously, he's Sridham himself, and he is one of the 12 prominent devotees of Lord Balaram in Braj. So just like Lord Balaram has his 12 prominent devotees, Srimati Radharani has 8 prominent associates. Madhya Yashoda is the leader of the elderly gopis. Nanda Maharaj is the leader of the gopas, the elderly gopas. So like this in Vrindavan, there's always somebody above you, taking care of you, looking after you, right? And so this is the essence of Bhakti Yoga, is to actually how we can become a servant eternally, you know. So in some spiritual processes, the end goal is you become free and you become independent, or even maybe you become God Himself and all these things. But Bhakti Yoga is very, very different. And this is how we can judge our, judge our advancement on how much we like that idea. That eternally we're going to be a servant. Eternally we'll be serving someone else. There'll be someone above us that we're serving, we're assisting, we're helping. That's Bhakti Yoga actually. And in the spiritual world, we can see there's Lord Balaram had his 12. So there's always somebody above. There's always somebody taking care of us. This also brings up the point. Sometimes we hear that, you know, we need to hear about the intimate Lilas of different residents of Vrindavan and things like that. But our process is first deserve then desire. Our process is to work on that serving mood. Work on that serving mood. That chasteness. We accept a guru. Now, Krishna doesn't really mind who we accept as guru, but we're chaste to that guru. Yeah, he's my guru. That's it. For life. They're my guru. It's not change guru. No, he's my guru. I accept him. Obviously, as long as the guru is in good standing, that's another thing. But generally, and that chastity Krishna is looking at, that chastity to the authority, to serve the person. So that serving mood is actually what we have to cultivate, because that serving mood is what either puts us in material consciousness or puts us in spiritual consciousness. So Krishna says, Jiva Srupahoy Krishnera Nityadas, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti, Veda Veda Prakash. The living entity is Shakti. He's a servant, right? But when he comes to the material world, what does he take on? Purusha Prakritisto hi, Bhunkte Prakriti Jangana. He takes on that enjoy, right? I'm going to enjoy. Doesn't matter what body, whatever. Everybody's trying to enjoy it. Everybody's trying to control, be the master in the material world. Therefore, material consciousness means trying to be the master. Spiritual conscious means trying to be the servant. It's that simple. Yeah, it's very simple, isn't it? Even materially, we can see people are always serving others, trying to help others. They're very happy. Even though they don't know anything about Krishna consciousness or Bhakti Yoga or even spirituality. Just by serving others, you become very, very, happy. And by trying to be the master, trying to control, the big masters, people have big companies or control big countries. They're the most miserable people. They're the most disturbed people, because it's very unnatural for the soul. So like this, our really core program in Krishna consciousness is to develop this mood of a servant, mood of service. And we all have our situation. If we're in family life, we can have that mood of service towards our children, toward our wife, toward our husband. Of course we're not perfect. We're struggling with so many anarthas and bad habits. But ultimately we always come back to that. If we can try to serve everyone around us in whatever situation we are, and figure out how to serve them. What does this person need? There's a new person, they need this. Somebody else might need this one. We're trying to help. We'll always be happy and make progress. So Ramdas Abhiram is a very super exalted eternal associate. He stayed around after Lord Chaitanya had left. He lived with the son of Lord Nityananda, Virabhadra Goswami, and preached Krishna consciousness all over. He has said that he touched his whip to Srinivasacharya as well, and gave him the blessings of the Gopas of Vrindavan, and there's many pastimes there. But is there any question on any of this or comment? Any question? No? Yes, Prabhu.
I really like what he was saying about when somebody's experiencing some difficulty, that a different way in that Caritamrita. Like sometimes Lord Chaitanya was very strict, but generally speaking, they try to put the person in a situation where that could be resolved, but also some benefit could be derived from it.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And that's the sort of multiple layers that you get from seeing that. Like, there was one layer where he said to the devotees, I don't want to look on the face of Kala Krishna Das. And you would think, oh wow, he's been rejected, you know. So there's that layer. So on the face of it, if you want to say prima facie in Latin, he dismissed him from his immediate association. So he definitely made a point. You know, he definitely made a point, like he didn't, and maybe we would, apply that, and I think the governing body ISKCON applies that if somebody's no longer in standing, if they're obviously doing, like if they're a sannyasi, for example, and they're clearly not following the Dharma, then they're not allowed to give class, they're not allowed to give kirtan in the temple. So that would be kind of, I think, something like the equivalent of saying in his association, no, I don't want him. But then, he was very pleased, obviously, that his devotees had made another arrangement for service somewhere else. He wasn't just, I know Srila Prabhupada was very upset. One of the first sannyasis left his ashram, and that devotees were talking about it so much, and Prabhupada said, by all of this, you're just going to make him go away. He's not going to want to come and do service because you're just dissing him so much, whatever you call that. So,
I'm just trying to think how to bring him back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a whole thing of, I guess my whole point there is, because I do read some things on the internet, where devotees seem to be applying modern concepts of, zero tolerance, or whatever it is, like whatever the catchphrase is, but it's not Chaitanya Charitamrita. And my point is just, if we're going to discuss it, just discuss it on the basis of the scripture, and you might have your perspective, that's fine. But if you're not discussing on the basis of the scripture, then, I mean, how is it a devotee discussion? How is it a Vaishnava discussion? By definition, Prabhupada said, Vaishnavas, whenever they say something, they quote, this is the Shastra, this is what the great soul said. Even Krishna himself, really. Krishna shows the universal form. He does all this stuff to Arjuna, right? But still, he himself says, I'm not just saying this, Devala, Asita, all the rishis, they also saying this. What more, what about us? Or, So that's really, if we're discussing the scripture, and of course then we're chanting the holy name because they're talking about the great devotees, we're getting purified by that discussion. That discussion becomes elevated. There's multi-layers to it of how the society can be protected, how the spiritual life of the individual can be protected. There's all these different layers to it, and for that reason it's extremely important. And yeah, thank you.
In Lord Chaitanya's dealings with ladies, he was very strict. And in that connection, I I've tried to understand the position of Madhuri Maliki. She's one of the
Yeah.
3.5 intimate associates of Caitanya Mahaprabhu.
Mm.
It's very difficult to find any information about that sort of
Mm.
searched and just wondered if you came across
Mm.
anything. How was it that Madhuri was one of the intimate associates of Caitanya Mahaprabhu?
I definitely will do a lot more research on that to see what there is, but probably there's some things where Prabhupada mentions in a purport something that his Guru Maharaj said to him. It was kind of passed down. And even in the pastime of Chota Haridas, which was there, wasn't it? It was Shiti Mahiti's sister who was where they'd gone to beg the rice. So there's some details even that they give of exactly what happened and why Lord Chaitanya could understand it was improper. My understanding of, and I don't know where I've read this or whatever, is just that, you know, this devotee Shiki Mahiti was such an advanced Vaishnava that Lord Chaitanya would actually discuss intimate pastimes based on the relationships in Vrindavan with him. And because his sister was always there, then she would also be, you know, she was listening, and Lord Chaitanya didn't mind that, so she was obviously a resident of Vrindavan too. But again, that's a very internal. I would sort of point your mind perhaps to the pastimes of Swarup Damodar, what he would do with the dancers. And Lord Chaitanya said, you know, what he does, his mind is like a stone. He said, even if I see that like a shop mannequin, Lord Chaitanya himself said, in Caitanya, when I see a shop mannequin of a woman, my mind, there's various transformations in my mind and body, he said. But he said, Swarup Damodar, Ramananda Roy. Sorry. But Ramananda Roy, his mind is like a stone. And he said the only evidence, what's that word? The only, proof or whatever for what he does is himself. There's no other comparison of what he does. So in those there's certain internal sort of pastimes that the people are just so. I mean, Lord Nityananda with Malini Devi, you know what he used to do? You know, he used to breastfeed from Malini Devi. You know, it's just mind blowing. It's like, what? But there's internal things like that, and that's right there in Chaitanya Bhagavat. So there's the Lila, the internal Lila that has nothing to do with conditioned consciousness or anything like that. And then there's the example that's to be shown for people who are conditioned of what they should do. And, that's why this multi-layer approach, it's a highly technical, you have to have some, it's not just, you can't just, throw a bunch of mud at a wall and see what sticks and whatever. It's, Lord Chaitanya would do things internally, and then externally he would do things that were an example for people. So he didn't, in a public area, he wouldn't have that Mataji come and sit next to him no, that never happened. But there was internal pastimes where her brother happened to be a pure devotee liberated soul associate, and she also was, and therefore it's noted, that she would also hear these intimate pastimes. But that's different to him as a sannyasi showing the proper example. That makes sense? Like the proper example is Junior Haridas, never seen again. Never. No. And all the devotees kept coming and saying, he said, that's okay, you're all fired up about this. That's okay, you stay here with him and I'll go to Alalanath and I'll just live there. And there's even up to Paramananda Puri and everybody. So he was so strict on those things. And with Kala Krishna Das, he said, I can't look on his face anymore. You know. So he was very extremely strict on all those things. But these are internal pastimes between the liberated souls. Sorry, that's all I know. That's all I don't have any definite, this happened, that happened. Is there any questions from ladies? Anyone else? No? Yes, wait, sorry. Yes.
There was one story, there was one leading devotee in ISKCON Prabhupada's time, and he was committing so many mistakes. And Prabhupada was forgiving him again and again, and Tamil Krishna Maharaj after some time came to Prabhupada and said, no, Prabhupada, how can we keep forgiving this devotee? And Prabhupada said, there's no end to our forgiveness.
Yeah. And that's there with even Junior Haridas. Like, he wasn't forever damned or anything. He took on a spiritual body and he used to sing for the Lord. So, yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. All glories. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Ho.